Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. So, my name's Clive Spencer, all right, aka Uncle Fester. A lot of people will call me Uncle Fester because I look like Uncle Fester. So, I come on to do this video, COVID-19, all right, and yeah, we're all faced by COVID-19 today, all right, and uncertainty in the world. And one sure thing is that people are dying of COVID-19, and we have an increase in mental health, which is happening, all right? And today, the poor, I mean people with poor health and poor wealth, are suffering because of COVID-19. But in the UK, we're in lockdown, okay? And we face a lockdown for the time unknown. Our government seem to keep us in this lockdown, keep us from seeing our loved ones and our families. But I'm a little bit concerned. And the reason I'm doing this video is my question is, how many deaths are actually occurring because of this pandemic? This pandemic, which we've actually all of a sudden, within a year or less than a year, we've got a vaccine available, a cure to beat the pandemic, COVID-19. However, for cancer, for the virus AIDS, we've never been able to find a cure. But all of a sudden, we got 3 or 4 cures on the market for this COVID-19. Although it hasn't been fully tested, it's actually been rolled out with a caveat for the pharmaceutical companies who've developed it. And their caveat is they can't be prosecuted or touched if the vaccine doesn't work. So over the last, since October last year, I've been watching some figures coming out, and people have been saying the number of deaths in the UK hasn't increased from the following years. Today I went out and had a cup of coffee with one of my support colleagues and a very close friend who's one of my supports. So I went and had a cup of coffee with him. And while we were there, a gentleman went past in a pair of shorts and t-shirt. And I made a remark towards the gentleman and said, "You must be cold," because it's cold here in the UK and it was raining. And he laughed, and it was his work. It was actually his work attire. He had his safety boots on, he had his shorts, and he had his t-shirt on. And I said, "I'd like to see what you look like in the summer." I said, "What do you do for a living?" And he commented he dug graves. So at that point, I sighed. I said, "Oh, you must be busy." And we got on a conversation about COVID-19, which a lot of people do. And when we got on the conversation, he actually made a statement of, "No, I haven't been busy at any time during this COVID. No, I haven't had an increase in work. The only busy, I've been busy the last 2 days. I'm digging a few graves today, and I dug more than normal yesterday, but it was less than 10. So it got me thinking, I wonder how many deaths we are having increased, because on the TV, and as many of you will know, okay, the BBC and the news and all the networks out there report, and this is the type, I'm going to share the type of reports they feed. So they feed, and this is the latest, 6 days ago, COVID, UK report more than 80,000 deaths. More than 80,000 people have died in the UK within 28 days of a positive COVID test since the start of the pandemic. All right, officials have shown. So I'm looking at this, and it's actually raising the questions: how many of them people who died, unfortunately, had COVID? And if you read that, that would give you an indication that COVID is rife and COVID is taking deaths. But when I went to the Office of Statistics for the UK, and mainly for England and Wales, I was a bit alarmed, because what I found in 2019 and 2020, the figures didn't really dramatically increase compared to what you would expect from a pandemic we're in. The thing is, with this pandemic, COVID-19, we are focused on COVID-19 and we have got the blinkers on, because there's other illnesses out here which we are not prioritizing anymore. So people are being diagnosed or not being diagnosed. Last minute, they're being diagnosed with illnesses such as cancer. Unfortunately, I've had a loved one taken away this year because with COVID-19, it was too late. Okay? So focus on COVID-19. What are we missing out here? Okay? And yes, I agree with you. We need to do something, but we need to step back and we need to have a better understanding, because what is the truth? I don't think anybody actually knows what the truth is, because for one, our population is growing, and with a pandemic, the pandemic is, as people catch it, people are going to be testing positive. And we already know anybody with a weakness, an illness, poor health, unfortunately, we need to protect, because they are the most vulnerable, okay, with underlying health issues. They're more vulnerable than somebody healthy. So we are going to get more people testing positive. But what is the truth about deaths? Because the cremations, what's the figure on cremations? But I'm looking at the statistics, and I'm gonna bring up the Office of Statistics in the UK. So there's our population. Our population in the UK is growing. In 2020, it increased by 0.47%. 68 million people live in the UK today. And what they're saying is the future, the UK population, we are becoming a UK population is aging. So we got an aging population. Where we got an aging population, we're going to have more problems with health. As you age in life, the body picks up more health problems. Okay? So we are going to see more increase in deaths in the future. We're going to see people with poorer health because our population is aging. And you've only got to look at it. Overview, UK population, Office of National Statistics, 2017, the population in the UK is getting older, with 18% aged 65 and over, 2.4 aged 85 and over. All right. So they're saying we are going into a older generation, and we haven't got many the younger ones coming behind us. So of course, our deaths are going to increase. And any illnesses like flu, pneumonia, we're going to have an increase in the deaths. All right. But what I went and done, I went and looked at the number of deaths in the United Kingdom. And as you can see, okay, in 2018, it went up to 616,000. All right. So that was up to 2018, and it's continually increased year upon year. But then it caused me to go and download a chart for 2020. In 2020, the number of registered deaths minus 1 week was 603,000. And that was for 53 weeks of 2020. All right. We had 603,000 deaths. Remember, 2018, we had 618. Then I thought I would actually download the statistics for 2019 and compare both side by side. So I'm going to bring them on and view them side by side. So if you view them side by side, and we've gone month by month here. So everybody says the deaths have increased. Don't forget, we had the pandemic, COVID-19, potentially come into the UK shores in March. From March onwards, we had deaths. And we have had deaths, and it's been getting worse as we've been getting closer to the end of the year. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take you through the chart month by month. So as we go month by month, so I'll keep the box, and hopefully the charts will move the same time. So you got the first week of recording, January the 3rd, 2020. We had 12,431 deaths. In 2019, we had 10,955 deaths for the week, the 4th of Jan. The next week in the UK, 10th of Jan, we had 12,139 deaths. On the 11th of Jan in 2019, we had 12,609 deaths. All right. And the figures just keep going up and down. But there's no drastic change. So I'm just going to go along now to when March. So March the 13th, let's have a look when March the 13th. So March the 15th, which is the nearest to March the 13th. In the UK in 2020, we had 10,834. And on the 15th of March, 2019, we had 10,567. So there's not much of an increase there. So we're going to go a little bit more forward now to June. Let me go back up the top here and line it up. So the 5th of June in 2020, we had 9,971. So we're in the pandemic now, and our figures have dropped slightly in June. Okay. And yes, the figures went up in April, as you can see. All right. April the 24th, we went up to 18,000. 17th of April 2020, we went up to 20,000. The previous year, we only recorded 9,000 in 2019. But as you can see, the figures haven't drastically been going up as the media would have us think. Media would have us think that the deaths we're having on top, you read that 80,000, it would have you think that the death rate in the UK is going out of control. All right. So I'm going to take this up now further. So we get up into September. Between it's floating between August and September, 8,000, 9,000, July, and then we come into October the 25th. All right, 18th of October 2019, there was 10,156 deaths. So I'm going to have a look at what it was for 23rd of October 2020. All right, it was 11,078 deaths. So we haven't drastically jumped up in figures. But what you got to remember now with COVID in 2020, we are focused on COVID, we focused on a cure, we're focused on COVID patients. We're not focused. We're going to have an increase in deaths because we are not actually looking at the other. Remember, we're boxed. We're just thinking about COVID. We're not thinking about the other diseases we've got out there. We're not thinking about the other illnesses. All right. So the death rate is going to go up because people, unfortunately, during COVID, haven't received their treatment, haven't had the operations they require, which has had a detrimental effect on their health. Okay, so we are going to have, unfortunately, increase in death. But if we keep going up to December the 25th, we had an increase as we go through December, as we go through, the deaths are increasing, and you are seeing a considerable amount of deaths. So on week 52 of 2020, we had 14,439 deaths. The year before, we only had 7,533. So there's an 100% increase. But the question I'm going to put out there is, we've got to expect an increase if we are not looking or not treating other illnesses and only focusing on COVID. Unfortunately, okay, the effects of not having treatment, the effects of not diagnosing illnesses, is going to be detrimental on our population. So, how many COVID deaths are we actually having? This is what we really need to be establishing, because I've done the grand total, and it's only for England and Wales, these figures. So these figures for England and Wales is 527,000 deaths. All right, 527 and 234,000 deaths. All right, but then in 2020 we have 603,000 deaths. There's an increase potentially of 70,000. Some of them will be because of the pandemic of COVID-19. But some of them may be due to other illnesses. Okay. That's where I am. I'm asking myself about the figures we've got here. Yes, potentially there is an increase. But when we look at the figures for 2018, we've got to look at the figures and say, well, hang on. We've got an aging population. We've got a pandemic, and we're actually not looking at the illnesses. We're not focusing on, we're only focused on COVID. So people who are having symptoms are not getting the early stage treatment. They're not getting the operations they require. So we are going to have deaths because their health is going to deteriorate. Their health is going to be, they're going to be becoming poorer in health if they don't get looked after, and they don't get the treatment, and they don't get the diagnosis. So we are going to have an increase in deaths. For certainty, we are going to have this R rate where people are being tested and they're being tested positive. They're going to continue to test positive. In the 1919 Spanish flu pandemic, the world was only 1.8 million and 1.8 billion people, population of the world. Today we're 7.8 billion population across the world. In the pandemic in 1919, there were, I believe, 500 million people diagnosed who had the virus. 50 million people, 200 million people died of the virus. But what they're saying, contributing factors were, a lot of people were undernourished. We just come out of World War I. Times were different. We didn't have antibiotics. We didn't have vaccines. The pandemic lasted 2.5 years without the vaccines and the antibiotics. So times are different today. We have, potentially, we're in a better times. Although we still face a lot of financial, at this moment in time, our global economies are getting poorer. But that's our own doing, because we're going into lockdown and our governments, I believe, in my opinion, are not being truthful. I believe something's not right. All right, we need to kiss. They're trying to they're keeping us in the dark and they just need to keep it simple and stop treating us stupid, because the data shows out there, and what I've just shared with you, we can only expect deaths to go up. We've got an aging population. That means illnesses. People will be becoming ill. All right. If we do not diagnose people's illnesses, we do not treat, then they will become poorer in health. And when you become poorer in health, you get weaker, and you will not overcome your problems. So what's the truth? That's the biggest question I'm asking everybody. It's something that I haven't really paid any notice to it until this morning, until I had somebody who works on the front line digging the graves for our loved ones, all right, who are unfortunately not with us anymore, who've fallen ill. When they turn around and tell you they're not that busy, it's just a normal day, then we need to ask questions. Okay? What is happening? For certain, we are going to have a population across the world which is going to suffer. with their mental health, all right, illness of the mind, because this locking down and keeping people away from their families, it's just sad. It's just sad, and it is hard. Having faced my own issues with mental health, and luckily enough, been taught how to overcome my emotions and manage my emotions, I'm in a good place. But there's going to be many out there on the front line who are giving their time, they're actually giving their time, and they're giving themselves over to help people to recover, to fight the COVID. What help are we giving them? What is the real truth? Because if you have an underlying illness, and your immune system's already weak, this COVID will just add to it. So by not diagnosing other illnesses and treating other illnesses, then we are going to have people, unfortunately, dying. Vaccinations. The vaccinations in themselves. We have people who have received vaccinations. You've only got to go to the British Medical Journal. And in Norway, they're doing studies at the moment because 24 people have died of COVID after they had the vaccination. But they had underlying health problems. The vaccination did not save them. So we have that going on in Norway. We have frontline service staff off work today because they received the vaccination, the first vaccination that came out. And since they received it, they've been off work because they've been feeling too weak to go to work. They feel drained. They feel their body is drained because of the vaccination. Governments are not sharing it. They're not telling you that. Why? This is the type of things we all need to come together, and we need to unite, come together as one. And the government needs to manage, to lead. A lot of members of parliament are receiving some big wonga at the moment because they're claiming expenses for their new offices. A lot of corporate companies are striving in this pandemic because the money the government is throwing away. So the government need to lead. They need to stand up and start looking at the figures, start looking at what's going on. That's my opinion, and that's all I want to share with you. Okay, because the figures what I'm seeing at the moment are not weighing up. And within a pandemic, I think I would have expected the figures to up dramatically. Okay, so that's where we are. Remember, 500 million out of 1.8 billion. This is what they're saying. Caught the Spanish flu. If you do the calculations compared to 1919, it took them 2.5 years without the vaccination, without the antibiotics. There was a lot of people in poor health there. A lot of people died because of the times were different. Okay, they didn't live like They didn't have the NHS. They didn't have the healthcare that we've got today. The sanitary weren't in place. Hence why the deaths were so large. Okay? It's time now for us to go, okay, we need to look at this. We need to look at where we are and what's really going on and get the answers. Love you all. Take care. And remember, if you need to talk, reach out, speak to somebody. Okay? If that in a conversation in your head is telling you you can't go out and you can't do things, then, or you find yourself in a dark space or a dark place where you can't see any light in the tunnel, there's plenty of light in the tunnel. All right, reach out and connect with people. You're not alone. Okay? There's a lot of people out there suffering today. But we all need to come together and pull together and be one. All right, I love you all. Take care. Bye.